Yeah, people are hurting,
Yeah.
and it can either drive people to wanting to come back home to themselves in a big, big way, or it can create more division, more pain, and
Mhm.
more lostness.
Yeah.
Um,
Division is the big thing in world politics these days.
Divisions
Division.
being played out all across the board, and I think it's super important to to find a place inside for yourself, whether in a little bubble. I wouldn't have recommended that in the past, but I think more now it's important because it's too gotten too complex and confused and pain body.
Yeah.
And so having your whatever friends feel healthy and good for you, supportive, your family that feels good, and if they feel good and supportive, and
And,
your work, your home environment as best as you can. It's not going to be perfect, but just some kind of little cocoon of care. Environment, Yogananda said environment is stronger than will. So some kind of environment that where you're taking good care of it and choosing as wisely as possible. And that includes food, it includes everything, what you watch on the movies and videos. Just take care of your environment. Okay, that's what it is. Really, it's your
that,
environment.
that for me is the most important thing, Susanna. And I know that you and I have been doing that. I mean, you've got your tiny house here in Northern California, where you're on this beautiful land where you're close to a stream and you've got forest behind you. I've got my country place, my beautiful country place that you know so well, on a lake and this beautiful mountain, and it's very secluded. And I know I've got my own oasis. I'm very lucky. I think both of us are very lucky in having that. And I know today it's very important for me to have that.
Yeah, yeah, and
Not get lost, like you say, in what's happening in the world. I know I'm conscious of it, but at one point I gotta, it's like, you gotta have almost kind of like some kind of boundaries, not to get sucked into it completely and
yeah,
have an oasis where you can at least settle down your head on the pillow and get some rest.
as much as possible, even if you're in a town or a city, just your environment is super important, and so that helps the garden, your interior garden. It helps keep it as free of static. I know it's not going to be perfect, but as free as static as possible. And then with meditation and maybe some body work and some healing work, whatever, you're emptying out inner content over time, so that this beautiful presence and beingness can really be supported to bloom and not be covered over by being distressed or overwhelmed or unhappy due to circumstances that maybe you could actually change. We can't change everything, but there are things we can. And I have noticed over time, doing the work I do with people, that there are things, of course, some things people can't change, but there are plenty of things that people can change that for some reason or another, they're not willing to tell themselves the truth that something's bad for them. And
Mm.
so on one hand, someone may be very sincere and saying they're sincere and think they're sincere about pursuing spirituality in the sense of wanting to really come back home and live their true nature. But in the meantime, they're not supporting what true nature is asking of them, which is to remove obstructions that would make the flow of truth move through their lives more seamlessly. Instructions that obstructions that actually are in their power to
Can you give a
change.
concrete example, please?
Well, for instance, a relationship that isn't healthy.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, that happens a plenty, plenty,
Yeah.
plenty. Um, and of course, I am never going, I don't want to be the person to, I don't want to be telling people what to do. But I definitely want to support and model as much as possible
Hmm.
that what it takes to actually be in alignment with truth is listening to truth, being that inner GPS, being listening deeply. And how do you listen is actually let your body tell you, okay? If it feels distress, if it feels unhappy, if you're compromising too much, you're not getting your needs met. And not like we want to be these babies, but we want to be able to be listened to and be felt and be honored and have sympathy and good companionship with people. More good than bad, I would say. We'll have bad be so little. No
Yeah,
one's
yeah.
perfect, but relationships aren't meant to be where we work our stuff out with people. Work your stuff out with yourself. Let them do their work. Come together and celebrate the joy of being together with somebody.
Hmm.
And then when it comes to work environments, yeah, we can't always have what we want, but you don't want to have a narcissistic boss. You don't want to have someone who's belittling you. You don't want
Yeah.
to be devalued
Or work that is not validating, or that you don't like, that
or you don't like, and you
you
just
don't.
it feels toxic to you and you don't feel you're wasting like how much time of your life on something that isn't even in alignment with your heart.
Mhm.
You
Can,
look,
can I say one thing about relationships? I want to say, going
mm,
back to that, is that relationships, um, it is possible to work some things out, and it is possible to explore together, um, and to evolve together. And sometimes that happens when there could be some conflict within the relationship, and then you look at what the other person is doing. At first, you may reject it completely, but then as you open up to it, you may learn something.
mm,
I think it's a good ground for evolution, not necessarily improvement, but evolution.
sure,
Um,
sure. I mean, otherwise, if you're not in relationship with people in general, we tend to just get the same because it's us.
yeah, there's no change. You're not challenged.
You're not
There's no
challenged to
problem.
look at the world differently, to see from another point of view,
Yeah.
to but and only the person themselves, oneself, can tell the truth to oneself about how much in the end is it in the end um of value. And we're the only people who can tell that to ourselves. Is this something that is of enough value to keep? And it's one can still love somebody and
Mhm.
even, let's say, even be friends with somebody on some level, but we don't have to be with somebody if it doesn't nourish us in the end. And it's no
Yeah,
weakness on that. It doesn't say anything negative about the other person. It's just that we need to be nourished. We're like a plant in a garden, and the soil needs to be good. And we can give these things as much as we can to ourselves. So
yeah,
having people and work and all the things that have to do with environment, food, there's so many aspects to environment, is not to be control freak, you know, but it's about being kind to
yeah.
yourself. Okay, kind and in care. And a lot of people weren't given good enough, well enough kindness and care growing up from their parents. So it's something
Mhm.
we have to learn how to give to ourselves and be able to see that saying no is can be a loving thing. And even walking away can be a loving thing, or walking towards and saying yes. So I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
it's
Yeah.
a delicate balance. Yeah, for sure, it's a delicate balance, and
Yeah.
yeah, in the same way, I. with relationship. Hey, I'm fine when I'm by myself and nobody's bothering me. Hey, it's like I can have a great time. And then somebody comes in and says, "Oh wow," then I have to like, "Whoops."
But guess what? Not everybody feels wonderful when they're by themselves. A lot of people feel
Yeah,
anxious,
yeah, yeah,
stressed,
absolutely.
bored. They don't know how to be still. They
Anxious. A lot of people get anxious.
anxious. They fill it up with
People who can't
something.
they can't sleep by themselves because they're too afraid. I
Yeah.
know she's too afraid. She puts all the lights on at night if she's by herself, and
Yeah. I
she
mean, we're not meant to be filling a need for someone else, a hole. I mean, I've
yeah.
walked away from relationships in the past, long ago, from the past where I felt like, yeah, there could have been love there too. But
Mhm,
in essence, I felt like there was too much of a hole in that person that they still need to learn how to fill for themselves, in themselves. And I
mhm.
could not be a replacement for that. It it felt unnatural and imbalanced. So to come together with
You
one's
don't want to
own
put in a muscle
wholeness,
roller.
to be as whole as possible and filled up as possible before really dancing in a relationship, um, I think is the best gift to another person, and vice versa.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about a certain emotional maturity that sometimes comes later in life, and
Yeah, yeah, and I see it even with my own kids,
mature.
they're young adults finding their way in relationship, and
Sure.
I try to squeeze in as a parent without them going, stop telling me anything. I try to squeeze in, like
And they're
just,
saying, "Leave me alone, mom."
well, I just want to, and I have been since, they were growing up. I just want to support them in their own individuality, their own self sense, and then
Yeah.
their own ability to be honest and integrity to themselves, and
Hmm.
genuine and not lose themselves in a relationship and mistake that for love, or there may be love mixed in, but look, real love comes from you being home here as much as possible, them being home, and then meeting. You meet. Does that mean people can't grow together? No. Does that mean that people can't be coming home to themselves while they're together? No, they can still do that. But to have the orientation be what's most important. I know some couples who are doing their spiritual work side by side, supporting each other in that, and learning how to be in relationship and trying to filter out when the wounds come up. It's really not for the other person to work out for them or heal.
Yeah. I know I have a friend who has been married for 30 years, and he's actually a psychotherapist. So he said when he got into that relationship, he said he went into it as a spiritual practice. He said, I want to go into this, as consciously as I can. And they have a wonderful relationship. Doesn't mean that it's perfect. But when stuff comes up, they
Mm.
can each stop and say, hey, this is not personal. Let's take a step back. Don't get too emotional about it. And they could work through it. They can go through it, and they have a beautiful relationship. Actually, I know two people like that.
That's beautiful. It's that's wonderful, and it is obviously possible,
Yeah.
and not to be
Unfortunately, it's
disheartened.
rare. Yeah.
Yeah, it really comes down, I think, in the end to, can one be um accountable to oneself for one's own feelings and not projected outwardly onto the other as if they're accountable. They're okay, look, someone may have done something that hurts. Own the hurt here, right? Work on that feeling and speak up, but without the blame, hopefully. But learn how to communicate in a way that, and learn and be, able to listen to one another, be accountable
Hmm.
and own your feelings and also see if something can be changed and tweaked, you know, so that better communication can take place, more kindness, perhaps, you know, more understanding of what triggers the other, but at the same time, one isn't responsible for the trigger, you know, but just to be accountable is super important.
And that's also, as you know, a lifelong endeavor. It's a lifelong practice. Like anything in life, like
Yeah, I mean it is. Let me
we
just close
we
this a
grow,
bit.
we evolve. You
Yeah.
know, we never. There's no end to that.
No, there isn't. We don't want to be islands upon ourselves. We want to be in relationship, right? Um, with people in general,
Mhm.
right? With life, with Mother Earth, with Source. Um, but I think that as spiritual seekers and finders, you know, the the priority, the first ground of where you stand is the ground of being, is it's the wholeness, it's source, it's this one, this you are at back home and there's no confusion left. So that should be the priority for people who are really interested in spiritual awakening. Okay, that's got to be the priority.
I totally
And
agree with
it's
that.
not a selfish thing, because from there your relationships are better, your work flourishes, you're probably going to make choices that are better for you from that place as well. You don't wait to make those choices, because making those choices helps you land more solidly on this on you know, just live from that place of oneness and inner unification. But the thing is, that's got to be where your arrow is headed, and stays there, focused on what's true for you, on truth. And it makes everything so much better. So it's not like you are making sacrifices after that that are that take away from you going home. Because a lot of people do. I've seen it. Let me just go there for a second.
Yes, happens all the time. I I like the way you say that. I definitely, yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it. I see it
I,
all the
I,
time,
yes,
that people are, let me just finish because people might not know what I'm talking about. Obviously you do. But what I've seen is that people will say, I want truth, and be so committed to themselves and maybe working with me or whomever, you know, making that kind of commitment, but they get derailed. And I'm not one to judge. I just, you know, like what, you know, truth takes place at its own rate and in its own time, but they're not willing to be truthful to them about something that is draining life force energy out. And because truth is a stream that requires your vigilance and your integrity and your loving commitment to and honesty to. And if you're sitting on the bank because you're trying to 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 be have two things going on, one is a relationship, let's just say it's a relationship, or a work thing, because that those are the two main things for people. That is, let's say, it's not in alignment with them to the point where it's draining life force energy out. How can you be committed to the stream and get what it is you say you really want, which is to come back home, while you're depleting your life force energy and dividing consciousness? You're dividing your attention. So your attention is in two places. You're not going to reap the rewards and the results that you're looking for here. Makes sense, right?